Alright people, what's going on? Space Cowboy here. Welcome back to the channel with another video for you guys today. Before we get started with today's video, please make sure to hit this video with a like. It's been helping the channel out a lot, so please make sure to continue to do so. Also, please make sure to subscribe if you're new here to get more Dallas Cowboys content from yours truly now and in the future. And finally, hit the notification bell to be notified when I go live or post new content. With that out of the way, before I even begin talking about the topic of this video, I first want to say before you go straight to the comments section and before you start getting at me for being crazy for even making this a topic of conversation, I want to be implicitly clear. I am not saying that this is 100% going to happen. I'm going off of the possibility of what this roster has, what the roster looks like now, and going forward with the decision making in this, that, and the third. So, I want to start out by saying this. 2020 is going to be a massive litmus test to determine where we are as a franchise with this new coach, with the roster we have in place, and all that other stuff. As you know, other than Dak Prescott, many of the other talented pieces on this team are under contract, okay? And we're bringing some new parts in to try and reconfigure and retool the offense to make it as good as it can be. As you know, we have a ton of talent on that side of the ball. And on the defensive side of the ball, there are a couple question marks, and that will be answered in 2020 to determine what we need to do to make sure we get our team to the right place where we want to be. But if in 2020 Mike McCarthy is able to harness the talent of this team and really show what it can be if it's hitting on all cylinders, we could be in for a very fun ride these next couple years. Now, the huge key thing is with 2020 being our litmus test is if the team ends up going, let's say the team goes 11-5 or 10-6. Ultimately, how the team performs during those games in which they lost or won will really gauge on did the Cowboys really get better as a whole. Because as you know, 2019, we had a very talented roster that should have been competitive in 2019 in that conference, playoffs, etc. Unfortunately, we missed the playoffs, which is just an outright, just wow. Like, I can't even believe that when you look at that roster as a whole, you know, the talent that was on that team. But as we saw, a lot of us, whether it be content creators or fans, we saw that, yeah, while there were times where the players sometimes did not execute, the key thing was coaching, and the coaching and the decision makings, game management, etc. That was the killer for the 2019 Cowboys season. I go back and watch some of those games, and I'm still perplexed on what the Cowboys were thinking as a whole. The keeping of Brett Maher when he was not doing well, the special teams unit being an overall dumpster fire, the defense not doing well when Leighton Vander Esch went out, especially in key situations, and then the offense just having weird play calling overall. And what I mean by that, I'm not trying to say that Kellen Moore was horrible, because guess what? Kellen Moore took this offense to the highest of highs, being the #1 ranked offense in the league when it came to yardage. And pretty much top 5 in any other category. But you saw that the Cowboys would just do these things in certain instances where it's like, what are they doing? And so I think with the removal of Garrett and that older administration, not saying age-wise, but I'm just saying as the old coaching staff, I think that this could possibly change for the better, especially if they know how to get to these players and resonate with them and make them the best that they can be. So, with that in mind, right, with this discussion I'm going into now, this is going under a levy of assumptions. So to start off, the first major assumption is that Dak Prescott becomes a MVP type of caliber quarterback under Mike McCarthy. And this happens on a consistent basis. Now, as we see with Dak Prescott, he's gotten naturally better as a passer as he's played more time in the NFL. Okay? 2019 was his breakout year. We saw what he can do once you had enough weapons around him and you protected him long enough to get his job done. So there is that. But the key thing is that Mike McCarthy expediting his growth and overall making him reach a higher ceiling at a much earlier time can help open the window for the Cowboys' contention status as we go forward. So, whether it be 2020 or 2021 where we see him get that growth, when I mean by like consistent MVP quarterback play, I mean, you could technically argue he reached that last year because he played at a top 5 level quarterback last year. Some people might say no, but if you look statistically and you look overall at how he played as a quarterback, he really did very well in 2019. So if he can increase his numbers and become more efficient as a passer, that is the first key pillar that will go for long-term success in making the Cowboys a consistent championship type of team. So that's number one. Number two is the Cowboys offense as a whole unlocks its full potential under Mike McCarthy. As you can see with the pattern of what I'm trying to get at, Mike McCarthy is the key for the Dallas Cowboys unlocking their full potential. And with that in mind, this goes under the possibility that Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, the offensive, everybody plays better. When we look at the offense as a whole, you have an all-pro running back in Ezekiel Elliott who can help take pressure off the passing game and really wear down defenses as the game goes on. You have a wide receiving core which is arguably the best in the league if everyone's good and everything falls into place. You have a tight end that's pretty solid, and if things go well, he can be a very good asset for you when it comes to the passing game, especially in the short glimpses we saw with Jarwin. And finally, you have an offensive line that has really good players on it with 2 future Hall of Famers on it at this point in time, and with solid depth can really help with the whole setup. This offense can be an amazing juggernaut that we haven't seen before when it comes to other Cowboys teams. Now, with all that in mind, that comes down to how we go about things. I think the Dallas Cowboys might go the route of the Kansas City Chiefs when it comes to their offensive type of play. You have a pass-heavy offense, or rather a pass-first offense that uses the running game in key situations to help wear down a defense or to move the chains, or just more so to create shorter down and distance. Now, we don't know what Mike McCarthy, or rather Kellen Moore, or whoever's on the offensive coaching staff at this point in time or in the future will do, but if things go well, this Cowboys offense can really push this team over the top. And I mean that. And so it really comes down to the Cowboys finding their true identity, which, based off of the composition of this roster, would be a pass-first offense with a very damn good running game with dynamic running backs to help extend the passing game. So there's that. And I would say that the final major implication, or rather assumption, is that the defense becomes good enough to hold the line. Yeah, there are questions surrounding everything outside of DeMarcus Lawrence, Leighton Vander Esch, etc. But the thing is that ultimately, if the Dallas Cowboys defense can just do just enough to get turnovers and make sure that opposing offenses don't get the opportunity to catch up if the offense is scoring a ton of points, this will help the Cowboys win more games. There have been multiple seasons, especially under Jason Garrett, where the defense would do really well and the offense was inconsistent, or vice versa. The Cowboys need to do good on both sides of the ball, but more so this. They need to be able to harness a strength, which we've known the Cowboys to be a heavily, over the past decade, more notably, to be an offensive-minded team that has a opportunistic defense to get turnovers and more or less stop opposing offenses. 2014 was a prime example of this, and 2016 was a prime example of this as well. The Cowboys are an offensive, more so sided team that needs a defense to be opportunistic. So, if the Cowboys can work on that, or if their defense ends up playing better than that, which, by the way, the Dallas Cowboys have players right now which have the ability, which more so have, can make the defense better than the 2 years that I mentioned before. So it really comes down to what happens on defense. If the defense does well enough to create turnovers and make key stops, it's really, really going to help just make this team overall better. And I can say that with sincerity. Now, with all this in mind, okay, this is a win now type of roster. You got a guy who's an experienced head coach who brought in an experienced coaching staff to take this young to now entering its prime roster and really contend for the next between 3 to 5 years. And I want to stress this fact. I've gone on record, and I will say this. Do I think the Cowboys will win a Super Bowl in 2020? No. Is it possible? Yeah, sure. The roster has the talent there, and it really comes down to how this, full roster looks under Mike McCarthy. If we end up going, let's say, 10-6, 11-5, and we say we win a playoff game and or two, who knows? Maybe we have more questions that need to be answered, or questions get answered but new questions arise. Then we can go from there. There's a whole lot of unknown factors to this team. But I believe that there are, of course, the two main ingredients that need to come together to create a dynasty in Dallas once again. Number one is Mike McCarthy being added. We've seen what he could do. He's won a championship before. He's had multiple 10-plus win seasons. He's gotten his teams to multiple NFC championship games. And yes, while there have been disappointments in certain instances, you can argue some of those Packers rosters that made it to the NFC championship game, some of them were not as good. Like 2016, for example. I was shocked to see a team like that go as far as it did. It definitely overachieved for the type of roster it was. You had a team in 2014 where that team should have gone to the Super Bowl, arguably, and we all know what happened, So overall, I do believe that the Dallas Cowboys have put together a coaching staff, which many people, like myself as well as others have said, is the missing piece to putting this team over the top. So we're going to see what he can do and what this coaching staff can do. But more importantly, it comes down to, can the talent on this team be maximized, which I think it can. And we're going to see. 2019, or rather 2020, I should say, is our litmus test. Whether you like it or not, we don't know what this team's going to look like. And I would love to see this team go 14-2, 16-0, you name it. But again, it comes down to key questions being answered. Is Dak Prescott going to see major growth under Mike McCarthy? Is this offense's full potential going to be seen under Mike McCarthy and company? Will the defense be good or just good enough to create turnovers and be consistently decent? A ton of these questions, but more importantly, also special teams. Will special teams be consistent? Okay? With all this in mind, I do think that the Dallas Cowboys have the potential to become the next great dynasty. You look at the other teams in the NFC, and yeah, they'll beat up on one another. You have another slot in the playoffs. You have a situation where you're playing in a division where two of the teams are still rebuilding, and you really have one team to worry about, which is on your coattails, more or less. But if all things work out, and you're capable of getting a ticket to that dance, that tournament, that playoff, all that other stuff you want to refer to it as long as you're in, you have a chance. And the more chances the Cowboys get over the next however many years will increase the chances that they can go back to the Super Bowl and maybe win it. It's baby steps. I get it, but I wanted to start a conversation talking about the potential of this roster and what it's going to take for us to get where we want to go, and that is sustained success and reaching championships and winning championships. So, with all this in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I know it seems a bit weird, but hey, I think it's an interesting conversation to have because we see a ton of people talk about the potential of the Cowboys having a really damn good team and then maybe being that next championship contender, this, that, and a third. So, down below in the comments section, do you think that the Cowboys are the next dynasty? What do you think the Cowboys need to do to get there? This, that, and a third. Feel free to leave that in the comments section below. With all that in mind, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, guys. Bye-bye.